Welcome, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Forgot to Save podcast, a twice-monthly gaming podcast where we go back and play the games that we always meant to, but never got around to with you, the viewers. I'm Mike.
And this is Stone, and if you're not already listening on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or YouTube, you can find us at any of those locations. Now, Mike, we are here, the first episode after having completed Shadow of Mordor. That hole in your heart should have been filled by this point.
Was that the goal, to fill it?
Yes, I heard that you were born with a condition of a Mordor-sized hole left in your heart.
A very specific size and shape hole in my heart that only Shadow of Mordor could fill.
It was weird because I don't know why I have this transcript, but I'm looking at it here, the hospital from when you were born. And the doctor says here, and I quote, "I need more auric blood." And I don't know what exactly was going on in there, but I mean, Tolkien was big at the time. I don't know.
I could definitely say that if it had to be filled with auric blood, that game definitely satisfied that requirement. There was a lot of it. But this is the first episode post Mordor. I mean, that was our first, successful podcast. We actually played through the entire game together. It took 3 episodes, which is an episode longer than we anticipate most games taking. But how do you feel? How do you feel about the flow so far?
I'm gonna save really the comparison itself. But I feel like Mordor probably had a little bit more in-depth discussion it could provide. But I won't say that I'm less excited to be playing a different game. But Mordor did have a certain thrill to it.
Sure. And, it definitely had a lot more talking points simply because it's already part of a much larger and established universe between the books and the movies and just the incredible amounts of lore that, obviously the game dipped into and even sidestepped around some. But yeah, definitely a lot to talk about with that regards. So I don't expect necessarily to have that level of conversation with every game we play. But it's definitely a good way to jump off, with the podcast.
Right. And I mean, speaking of things past, I think over the weekend, we had what I consider to be my greatest moment in watching a Twitch stream ever in my entire life. And that was you on Otstarva's Who Wants to Be a Soulsionaire?
A Soulionaire.
A Soulionaire
Yep.
stream, which I thought was phenomenal. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that without giving too much away?
Sure. So everyone is familiar with the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's a trivia game show where the questions get progressively harder and you can potentially win more and more money. Well, Otstarva, who is a well-known content creator both on Twitch and YouTube, he definitely specializes in Soulsborne type content. He invented Who Wants to Be a Soulionaire, which is a Soulsborne, Dark Souls mostly, type of trivia game where you win quote-unquote souls. There's no actual prize, it's just for fun. But he reaches out to other content creators, well-known content creators like Ouroboros, like Lobos Jr., and he asked them to participate. And this past weekend, he had lined up Paragon DS, who's a good friend of mine, and Paragon actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, I actually don't know a lot about Soulsborne." Funny enough, because he makes videos on them. Would you be my lifeline? And I said, sure. So the way it works is if he gets stuck, he can either...
You never asked me that.
I didn't. I didn't. I wish I had, and I could have called you at the last one and said, hey, I hope you're watching because I'm about to be a Soulionaire. One of those little things. But you get 3 lifelines. You can take 2 wrong answers away. You can re-roll the question, or you can phone a friend. So Paragon called me up on a question. He got stuck. I gave him the right answer, and he got it right and moved on. He eventually lost, unfortunately. But then they were looking for another contestant, and a lot of people apparently in the chat were trying to get Otstarva to call on me.
Right.
And
including myself.
Including Stone. And he actually said, no, I don't want him because he knows too much and he'll win.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I was a little peeved about this, but then they chose Curtain Guy, who is...
the biggest backhand compliment.
Exactly. It was a very, very much a backhand compliment. But then they called on Curtain Guy. Curtain Guy used me as his lifeline, unbeknownst to Otstarva. So Curtain Guy gets stuck. I hop on the call. Otstarva's kind of floored that it's me again. I start giving the right answer in a more roundabout, sarcastic way. And Otstarva actually... slightly roundabout. Otstarva actually banned me from the Discord.
Yes. After you gave Curtain Guy the right
The
answer
right
and all
answer.
the reasons why the other ones are wrong.
Granted, I made up those reasons entirely, but he banned me from Discord. Curtain Guy, bless his heart, he wasn't sure that I knew the answer, and he trusted his
There
gut.
was some coercion going on.
There was, yes. Otstarva, he'll sometimes give hints, and if you ever fall for his hints, then shame on you. Basically, what happened was, it was the question of what great shield in Dark Souls 3 is the lightest. And the flavor text of the shields themselves are actually wrong. One of them, the Twin Dragon Great Shield, says it is the lightest of the Great Shields, and in fact, it's the second lightest. So, unfortunately, Curtain Guy fell for that trap. He got it wrong. And at that point, Otstarva was thinking about just ending the stream, and he said, you know what, Blue, if you're still listening, get back on the call.
Right, you can have it with one lifeline from where Curtain Guy left off at the hardest question because I don't think you'll get them. And there was some deception going on with his. We won't spoil what happened, but can I just say that there was a point where legitimately, like, watching, because you were like, we were messaging each other before this was happening because we were mad you weren't going on. There's some transparency, but when you got on, there was one question where I was literally out of my seat in front of the screen, like, come on, Blue. I was cheering so hard for Mike. After the stream ended, I like called my girlfriend. I was like, you need to watch this. Like, she's a huge Penguins fan, and she was like watching the replays from the game, and because they like won and went to the Stanley Cup, and this was the equivalent of watching the Stanley Cup for me. Granted, I'm going to be watching the Stanley Cup literally tonight, but it won't be the same thrill.
So we won't spoil the way that ends. If you are interested, maybe I'll try and get a link to the video when Otstarva puts it up, and we can attach it to this episode if you're at all curious. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun to watch. I think it was more fun because I knew you, but it was a blast to watch. Okay, enough talk about the weekend though. We have 2 games to discuss today because we have our free game. And do you want to tell them what the free game is?
So for this month, we chose Final Fantasy 15, A King's Tale. Now, what this is, it's a free game that's available on both Xbox One and PS4, and this is just a side-scrolling beat-em-up. It's very akin to some of the old arcade games that you all used to play, like, I don't know, Ninja Turtles.
I thought of Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time, it came up instantly, but I know like Simpsons had one similar. Even some like Battletoads Double Dragon, or I guess Double Dragon itself is probably
River City Ransom.
Yeah. The game takes place 30 years before the events of Final Fantasy 15, and in Final Fantasy 15 you play as Noctis, but in Final Fantasy 15 A King's Tale, you actually play as his father, Regis.
Yes, and I was hoping to see with this game, because I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy 15, you had not finished it. So I was waiting to see if this game, without having a big knowledge of the story of Final Fantasy 15, if you could appreciate it as much, because it is really just an old school side-scrolling beat 'em up. So let's start with that. First of all, how much of it did you play? And without that knowledge of the story, do you think you really enjoyed it? Did you care at all? What's up?
For the story, I don't know. It seems really light from what I've played. Now, to be honest, I've only played through the first part of Duscae. So I have met Wescom, I've unlocked magic and combos, and the, what's it called? What's that one big combo called? R something?
Amager.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Armager.
Armager, whatever it is. And so I've really only learned a little bit. I know that the Ronin and the monsters are invading. There's something about a blue crystal. There really hasn't been a lot of story unveiled. And I guess at this point, I don't know that I'm really anticipating them going too in depth. Am I wrong?
No. And you know what? Honestly, that's what I like, because, I mean, it's a King's Tale. It's pretty much the Princess Bride in a side-scrolling beat 'em up from Final Fantasy 15. So you mix all those things and you have a perfect formula for me, but that might not be for someone else. But with the story taking place like 30 years before the events of Final Fantasy 15, it is cool because in Final Fantasy 15, you hear about your father going on this quest and like the 3 companions he had, and they liken so much of your adventure to his, but you never see it. So this is really just a small glimpse at that
Hmm.
and seeing his kind of interaction with them, however minor it is. So really, at its heart, it's just a fun side-scrolling beat 'em up. But if you really love Final Fantasy 15, then I think you get more out of it.
Sure. Sure, that I can definitely see that, and I mean, at the very least, I can say that I am recognizing names. Like when I saw the name Regis, I knew who that was, and I remember hearing about Wescom, and of course, we've explored the plains of Duscae in Final Fantasy 15. So there's at least familiarity there. It's not like they went off, in some crazy tangent and went to some lands we've never heard of. So there is that air of commonality. Not to mention the fighting itself. Obviously, the combat's very, very different. But you can actually see, and I really like this, you can see where Noctis actually learned his technique from his father.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah. And I mean, while we're talking about the combat, yes, it was phenomenal to see that transition because it's not just Noctis learning from his father. There's also similarities with the different companions you can summon. And you only have one right now, but he's most similar to Prompto. If you guys haven't played Final Fantasy 15, you have a companion who uses guns similar to this first companion you get. But the combat, I mean, I think is pretty cool. It's a little bit of rock, paper, scissors because you pretty much have 3 attack buttons and 1 dodge button. And every enemy is weak to one certain type of attack. For example, you have a shield bash, a heavy attack, and a quick attack. There are some ways you can parry. Some of them you just have to dodge straight up. But you kind of have to learn the different enemies you're fighting. And when I was playing personally, I didn't really feel that was too competitive, but I button mash anyway, so I was pretty much hitting square the whole time and getting punished if I didn't do the right combos. But what was your experience with combat?
Real quick question. Did you play on the normal or casual difficulty?
I think I played normal.
Okay. I'll be honest. I did put it on casual just because I wanted to kind of get through it so I could experience not just the game, but also some of the story. Definitely did not find it at all challenging. So I don't know if casual is that much easier than normal, but it probably is. I think the combat there's not a lot of depth to it, but it is fun.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun. And it's one of those games where you can just you can't really hit one button and win because you do have to occasionally shield bash or whatever, but you can button mash and win. Or you can actually take the time to learn the combos that they're passing on, like, sending enemies into the air with square, square, triangle, or doing the cyclone strike with circle, 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 circle. And you can chain those together into some really impressive combos, which the combos also then unlock your companion abilities, they unlock your ultimate abilities, and yeah, it's just been a pretty satisfying beat 'em up.
They really walk kind of a delicate line because we have the PS4 and the Xbox One, 2 extremely powerful consoles. We're playing a really old game on them. So being able to give the simplicity of the old side-scrolling fighters, but also give the kind of, I don't know if I want to say advantages of having more options on the controller and more that they can do with the hardware. They did a good job of keeping it simple is kind of where I'm trying to go with it. There's very few combos, though there are, like the one you mentioned where you hit him in the air. There's also a shield bash where you can stun them all. And then your dodge button. So it's very Souls-like. So that's for you. But, being able to dodge the attacks, which you couldn't do in a lot of those old beat-em-ups. I mean, Ninja Turtles in Time, I love that to death. And there was 3 attacks you could do, like jumping attack, normal attack, and then that kick that took up your meter. So, yeah, they did a great job kind of walking a line of a classic old school beat 'em up. They provided some story, but honestly, if you're not a Final Fantasy fan or you haven't played Final Fantasy 15, I don't think you're losing out on anything from not knowing the story.
Sure. It is just kind of it's like a bonus. It's a treat. It's nothing that's you're not going to sit there and delve into the lore of A King's Tale. And just to go back really quick, Stone had mentioned that it's similar to A Princess Bride and how it's told. And what he means by that is the game opens up with as Noctis rather, laying in bed, and his father Regis is there with a book. And he actually says, I've actually now read all of the tales in this book. And Noctis says, well, why don't you tell me a story about you? And then Regis says, well, I have had my fair share of adventures. And then that's how you go back into the game itself. It was a really fun little transition.
Yes, I love The Princess Bride. So I was very happy to see one of my, I know it's controversial, but Final Fantasy 15 is in my top 3 games. And is one of my favorite games, told in the style of one of my favorite movies with like one of my favorite old genres. Like it was fantastic for me. Um, and because it is kind of an older genre, it's usually associated with the pixel art. And
Sure.
this game, in my opinion, I feel does pixel art pretty well. Did you have an opinion on it when you were?
I think the art style was fine. I think one of the things that I didn't like, and at first I honestly thought it was more of an error than anything else, but some of the animations, they kind of freeze up in the middle. They kind of slow down, and I think that was an artistic choice rather than the game itself not running properly. And I didn't like that because it happens a lot. Like most combos have a moment during the attack where it's going to slow down.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean now.
It didn't break the game for me. It just like I almost wish it was something I could either turn off or if I could at least set the frequency. That was a bit jarring because other than that, the combat feels pretty smooth. But then all of a sudden you hit this combo and it's just brrr.
Yeah, they take some time to like let the moment land, quote unquote, which is kind of a more modern thing. And really, they do that when you start an encounter in 15. So I think it was really to be like, yes, we're associated with Final Fantasy 15 in case there was a second which you forgot it. Which for me was like, yeah, I love it. But like everyone else might be like, all right, shut up.
I noticed especially when you start fighting the killer bees, every time you go to either hit or shield bash one of the projectiles, the stingers, it happens. And it's just like, once I've seen it 3-4 times, I really don't need to keep seeing it.
That, I know that did happen, yes. And I can't remember if I'm like casual and normal, but it could be every time for you because you're on casual.
Maybe.
But they do give you the opportunity because with the bees, you can reflect it back at them.
Right.
You can completely shatter them, or you can redirect it at another enemy, I think, with all 3 of the buttons.
Yep.
So, yeah, it gives you that bullet time for it. But, yes, there are also combos when you're, landing the final hit. It goes into that, like, bullet time as well.
I will also say this. So we talk about how we want to present a free game per month. Now, last month we did Fallout Shelter, which is free to play. You can go through the entire game without spending a dime, or if you want, you can spend a little money to get, your lunch boxes or whatnot. Yeah. A King's Tale is 100% free.
100%.
There are no micros.
Another thing to keep in mind, I beat a King's Tale because I love Final Fantasy 15. I couldn't stop playing. So I burned the whole way through it. I think there's only 6 levels. Maybe 7. I don't remember for sure.
Now, what are you counting as a level? Is that like the castle or the city was 1 and then Duscae is 2?
Yeah, like any change of scenery, it'll have a title card and it'll say the last one. It says whatever the area is, and then final level. It literally says a final chapter. But yeah, any change in scenery. And speaking of scenery, actually, before I detract, it has interactive scenery with the magic you use. If there's water and you use blizzard on it, the water will freeze. If there's grass, you use fire on it, the grass sets on fire. So they do have little elemental stuff in it, which I thought was a nice little touch that didn't really 100% need to be there. It was just kind of a little extra.
Okay. I noticed that there was fire on the ground, but I never noticed the water. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Yep, it's your fault. You were burning the entire Duscae. But yes, when you beat the game, you unlock an extra mode that's called Dream Battles, and they kind of have this scenario set up already, and you can go through and play it. I don't know the number for sure. I'm estimating, but just from the list I saw, it looked like there were about 20 to play after the fact. So for it being free, you get the entire little story mode, and then you can get these additional battles to do after the fact. And I think they have a rating system, so you can continue to try to get the highest rating. So, I mean, if anything, it has as much as Angry Birds, and look how well that did.
So I'm looking at howlongtobeat.com, and it says main story typically takes people about 90 minutes. To do the main story and extras, which I'm assuming are then those dream battles, it's about 3.5 hours. Completionist, 4.5 hours. So, and the game does have trophies or achievements if you're on Xbox. So if you just want to burn out some quick achievements and trophies, you could do worse.
And if you want to fear that you may be addicted to one of the best RPGs, if not the best RPG you've ever played, then Final Fantasy 15, you're going down a dangerous road.
I still need to go back to that.
You know, it's not for everyone. Oh, now we're talking about Final Fantasy 15, but it's not for everyone. Unfortunately, I don't get it because Final Fantasy 15 is the best RPG I've ever played, point blank. But it's really controversial. And the reason being is because it says Final Fantasy on the front. People have fatigue after 13 and they put it down for that reason. But it is a truly, truly, truly great game. And I will stand by that to the end of the earth. And I know that's unpopular and it makes me sad that's unpopular, but
So I think that's going to have to be a topic for another time, and I don't know exactly where we'll fit it in, but I really do want to discuss the idea of what do you do, or how do we as gamers treat upcoming games when the previous either iteration or the previous content from a developer was lackluster? You know, do we give second chances in the industry, I guess is what I'm asking. But we'll try and find a place to throw that in, because I'd really like to talk about that.
yeah. How about we put that on our Discord and Facebook if you guys have some input, and then we'll try to section off a period of time in the next episode. Because I will also say that's the reason I didn't buy Watch Dogs 2.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Fantastic. Well, before we get even farther down the rabbit hole, overall, just out of my curiosity, do you plan on finishing A King's Tale, or do you think you've gotten what you're going to get out of it?
I think I've gotten what I'm gonna get. The story would be the only thing that would bring me back in, and if you're telling me there's really nothing that's going to blow me away, you know, when I connect the dots between this and Final Fantasy 15, I could probably do without.
It's a little spoiler alert, but I'm pretty sure they put this on the page of the game when you go to download it. But you do get to see all the companions come together, which is cool. You get to see Sid, and then you get to see I forget the last guy's name, but you meet him in Final Fantasy 15 as well, and you fight with him, and he's cool. So it's cool to see that band come together and how they interacted and how it mirrors almost exactly your experience in Final Fantasy 15. Because when you play Final Fantasy 15, you feel like you're a part of that group.
Right.
So
absolutely.
It's cool to see there's this other group that they were your heroes and now you get to play as them. So it's cool. It's a fun little thing. All right, let's talk about some Undertale.
Sure.
I didn't mean to sound depressing.
Let's talk about Undertale.
Undertale again. All the times. And no, okay, that's a good. I mean, everybody's talked about Undertale when it came out.
Yes.
That game defines a cult classic. The development cycle for it is actually not a huge story. It took about 2.5 years. It started as a one-man team. Toby Fox. He used to be a composer. He made a lot of music, and he worked for a webcomic called Homestuck, and he composed their music there. But before he even did that, he had originally created a mod for Earthbound. I believe it was called the Halloween Hack. It had something to do with Halloween. But he kind of used the comic style, but a little bit less PG for Earthbound. And that's kind of how he got into programming. So with his free time when he was working on Homestuck, he created, he wanted to create a game where there was no focus on violence. You could beat the entire thing completely non-violently. And he came up with this battle system. He sent it out to these people that were working on Homestuck with him. And they said, I mean, you're really onto something. Why don't you expand on it a little bit? So we set up a Kickstarter campaign, goal of $5,000 to make it.
5,000.
Crushed it. 50,000 he raised for it. So he hit a lot of bonus goals. He hired an artist to help alongside it. So really it's a team of two of them, with the exception of the contributions from Kickstarter backers at the higher tier. Three of the bosses were contributed by actual Kickstarter backers.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Now, I believe 2 out of those 3 are optional. I could be wrong on that because I know that you fight one of them, and I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't gotten there yet. So I'm going to refrain from saying any more on that. But the other cool thing is, yes, he built a battle system first, but when he actually sat down to work on the game, he composed all of the music for it first, which I thought was really cool because like as a composer, he needed that base to have the picture in his mind to build it. But when it actually he had something to show, he showed Fangamer. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're like a little shop that's online for different gaming stuff. They sell for indies like Stardew Valley and Ukulele and um, they have merch for him. And he sent it to them and they loved it. So that's another reason that the Kickstarter kind of took off a little bit. So I mean, the development cycle, while yes, pretty standard, really kind of has a semi-interesting backstory, but it's nothing completely out of the ordinary. It is cool that it was just this tiny team, and I know that Toby specifically kept it small because he didn't want to rely on other people that might delay it, but he also didn't want this Kickstarter to get this big because he didn't want to let so many people down if it took longer.
Right. I was reading, just about the Kickstarter. Apparently, when he originally set the project in motion, it was only supposed to be about a 2-hour game. Mm-hmm. And then the Kickstarter kind of blew up. He had more money than, he could work with. I mean, he asked for $5,000. He got 10 times that.
Yes.
And so he was able to put some more time into it, developed it over the next couple of years, and developed a game that a single run, give or take, is between about 6 and 7 hours. But there are multiple ways, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but there are many ways to play the game, including going back and playing it again while you've already created, or going back to play it again after you've beat it in certain ways, because I think that's even a prerequisite to get certain endings, and there's a lot to do in the game. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, yeah, it's cool. And I mean, he stayed pretty active for an indie dev. Right now, talks about Undertale 2 are in the air. There's, no official word on it yet, but Toby said there's talks. And that's fine. I'm not, because he spaced this out so that the content would be full enough that people would have a good experience with the game, but I don't want anything rushed,
Sure.
So that's how he wants to take it. That's completely cool. My only concern with this being such a big cult following is the people that harass him online. We're not gonna get it, so guys, just be cool.
And I think that not the downfall, but the potential downfall to creating Undertale 2 is, I'm going to use the example of Blair Witch Project. And I know you don't like horror movies, but Blair Witch was made on a very, very modest budget. I think it was somewhere around $30,000, and it just did unbelievably well. And it became, it's maybe more than a cult classic, but it definitely within the cult circles grew massively in popularity. And then they went on to make the Blair Witch 2, which lost so much money because they used a much higher budget. They went completely in a different direction, and they lost all of the fans that they had gained in the first one. So how do you follow up a cult classic with a sequel? Because you can't try and make another cult classic. That has been proven never to work.
Right. Yeah, I could think of like 3 examples off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I mean, Donnie Darko, Paranormal Activity. Like, that's...
Right. When you try and make a sequel to a cult classic, your idea is, well, I'll just make another cult classic. You can't make a cult classic. It has to happen.
Yeah. So, pace yourself, Toby. Pace yourself.
Toby.
Like, he listened.
Mr. Fox.
Hey, level with me. Toby. Team Money. Take it easy. All right, let's talk about our actual Undertale experience. Because I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, even if you don't tell me.
Okay.
Why don't you hit me first?
Okay. So I played 2 hours. So, roughly what I guess would be about a third of my first playthrough. What I've seen so far, and just, I guess, we haven't really talked about the idea, the plot of the story. It starts out very, very simplistic. Basically, you have the idea of, in the days gone by, there was humans and there were monsters. And at one point, we did coexist. But humans decided, monsters, you're not really for us. So we actually sent them all underground. We sealed it away. There's only one entrance in Mount Abbott, or Ebbet, I think is what it is. And as a child, we somehow find our way into the underground. And we're now we fall down this hole. And now we're in the land of monsters. We're introduced to the world by Flowey, this sentient flower, who then turns out to be a monster himself. and we are rescued by a she-goat, Toriel.
Toriel, yeah.
Toriel is a very, very caring individual who wants nothing other than to protect us. And we're clearly not the first humans that have actually made our way into the monster world, because we actually, exploring Toriel's house, you find many different types or sizes of shoes. And Toriel even says every person who has come always tries to leave, and the same thing always happens. They always die.
Right.
So Toriel wants you to, I mean, she makes a house for you. She bakes you a pie, you know, the perfect kind of pie that you would want. And she just wants you to stay there because she wants you to stay safe, but you miss home. You want to get home. And
Right.
so you finally convince her to allow you to proceed. And in doing so, she tells you, like, it's going to be tough. It's going to be arduous. In fact, you're going to have to beat me just to show that you're tough enough to make your way out there.
Right.
And thus the adventure begins.
So the first question I want to ask is, do you prefer cinnamon or butterscotch?
I definitely preferred cinnamon.
Okay, but if there was like butterscotch in it, you wouldn't turn away from it?
So here's the thing. The game did not give me the option to actually say, yes, it would bother me, because I really do not like butterscotch.
You hate butterscotch?
Not a fan.
So when you got the pie, it still said butterscotch pie, right?
Oh, yeah. She said that she made me a cinnamon butterscotch pie.
Yeah, but when you pick it up, your inventory says butterscotch pie, so that's even better.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
But, okay, so those two characters you just talked about, let's talk about them, because this game is built on your interaction with people and objects.
Mhm.
The whole adventure is mostly that. I won't say that's the entirety, but the first person you meet is Flowey. Monster, sorry. You meet
Yes.
Flowey, and I love that introduction. I love you fall down, you see Flowey, and you see what is the battle screen. It's a box with your red heart in the middle, but everything is in black and white. And Flowey tells you, you know, down here, you can pick up these friendship pellets and you'll get more love points. So he throws these pellets at you, and if you move your heart toward him, you take damage. And then he's like, you're a sucker. You're going to die here. And then Toriel comes and saves you. But your first impression, what did you think of that intro by Flowey?
That, I found myself laughing out loud when he said you need to just catch the friendship pellets, and then I instantly took damage. I thought, okay, if this is the kind of humor and writing that I'm about to experience, I guess I can get through this.
So the other creepy thing with Flowey is he's the only real character that has a voice. You start out and he tricks you, and then he does that really creepy laugh, and his face distorts to be something evil. We first dropped down there, and it was a little spooky to begin with, and I'm not really good with that kind of stuff, but I knew it's like a little fun game. So I walk up and find Flowey. I'm like, oh yeah, Flower, let me get these pellets. That'll be fun. And then he hits me, and it transforms like that, and I'm like, maybe this isn't the game for me. But that was the first time I played. This is not the first time I played. The first time I played through it, I got about 2 hours. So I probably got to where you stopped.
Okay.
And then I didn't pick it back up again. Again, not because I didn't want to, just because that's the point of the podcast. So Toriel, she saves you, regardless of whether or not you dodge Flowey's pellets. Now, I will say I dodged Flowey's pellets because this is the second time I played. I know this trickster, I'm not falling for
Sure.
it. And when you do, he turns into that grin, and then he says, "You've done this before, haven't you?"
Oh, clever.
And it got me for like half a second. I'm like, oh, it knows me. But it was so well done, because it's like, the game knows you're gonna game the game, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, you're rescued by Toriel, and you talk about Toriel being very caring. The cool thing about Toriel is her name sounds familiar to the word tutorial, because that's literally what she is. She's based off of characters like Faye and Navi from Legend of Zelda, who are tutorial characters that explain to you how to do all the puzzles instead of letting you learn them. And that's why the first puzzles you encounter, she literally holds your hand and pulls you through the puzzle. Because Toby thought, when he does these things, why don't these characters just do them for you if they're going to tell you to do the whole thing? So he made a tutorial character that literally does everything for you instead of just telling you how to do it.
Oh.
So she's a really on the nose character, and I thought that was really clever. But it also adds to a great personality that she has. It's like really matronly, and very, very, very soon after you start the game, like Mike just said, she tells you you can't leave here. Everyone who leaves here dies. So she tries to destroy the exit to the ruins. Now, Mike, I ask you, did you choose ahead of time to do a lethal or non-lethal playthrough, or are you just taking it as it goes? And what did you choose?
So I haven't made a conscious decision. I know that you can do non-lethal or all lethal. I guess it's the neutral, which is just kind of some of both. I'm not really going to. I don't really have a plan on doing one or the other. I'm going to do whatever feels right in the battle itself. That's my plan.
So the first time I played through the game, I wanted to do non-lethal. I didn't know that there was these two huge endings. I just thought it'd be fun to do non-lethal. So I did the fight with Toriel, and I did not kill her. Did you, or did you not kill her?
Did I kill Toriel in the beginning?
Yeah.
I did.
What? You're a monster.
I did.
So, confession. The first time I played, I beat Toriel. The second time I played, I forgot how to not beat, like I beat non-lethal Toriel. The second time I played, I forgot how to fight Toriel non-lethal. So I thought you had to get her to be weak, and then you'd have the option to spare her. I guess we should take a second to explain the battle system.
Sure.
When you battle, like I said, there's that frame with your heart in it, and you have 4 actions in front of you. You can fight, you can act, you can use items, or there's an option for mercy. And with mercy, you can spare someone or you can flee. And those are how your non-lethal actions are decided. If you choose act, there's a few different ways you can get around having to fight. Whether or not, like with Toriel, you might have to talk to her and then spare her eventually. Now, you can get through any battle with the knowledge beforehand just by interacting with the environment and the characters beforehand that you talk to. So every fight has an answer that you may already know about. Now, when I was playing the second time, I skipped through a lot of the dialogue because I already knew what they said, but I forgot that in the tutorial area, one of the frogs tells you you can spare someone even if they're not yellow, which is how you know that they're able to be spared. So I was going through fight, waiting for her health to get low, and I accidentally killed her because I got a crit. So I held down escape, quit the game, loaded up my save point, went back to her, spared her, beat the fight non-lethal. As soon as you finish that fight and move on to the next room, Flowey is there again, and he talks to you. If you go through non-lethal, he tells you, you think you can get through this way? You can't get through this world without turning violent. It's impossible. Now, if you killed her, quit the game, and then go back, he tells you he knows what you did.
What?
Yes, he tells you, I know what you did. I used to be like you. I could save before you got here. Isn't that awesome?
That's impressive.
So right in the beginning, you find out Flowey kind of used to be the main character, which I thought, I got goosebumps when I read that because I knew what he was going to say again. And I was like, you know what? Obviously, I didn't read the tutorial thing before, so I'm going to pay more attention to the dialogue. Goosebumps.
Wow.
He's like, I know what you did. You killed her and you regretted it, so you went back. And I was like, ooh, this game knows me. This is that Metal Gear Solid fight all over again.
Wow. The Psycho Mantis.
Yeah. Put it in the second slot.
That's impressive. So this is good. I'm glad that we're doing this because can I just kind of jump the gun and give you just a really super quick impression of the game?
Absolutely, please.
I don't like it.
Oh.
I don't like it.
Oh.
But this right here, this conversation is already making me appreciate it to the point where the next time I pick it up, I am going to look for those subtleties and those intricacies a lot closer because that has me honestly genuinely excited.
So that's the thing about this game, and I feel like that is where I stepped away from it in the beginning. Again, I didn't really dislike it. I just had a problem being motivated to continue to play it. And maybe that is where you could lie now. But this game gives you what you put into it. Like you get back what you put in.
Yeah.
And I feel like Dark Souls is a lot like that in a way. So if you take the time to interact with people and really see what they say, you can get a lot out of it. It will tell you how to beat the challenges coming up just in a roundabout conversation. So it's phenomenal. The game really, honestly, is phenomenal. I will get the cat out of the bag here. I beat it, non-lethal. I beat it, and I'm gonna go back and do a second playthrough.
Like, just since we decided to play this for the podcast, you beat it non-lethally?
Yes, and that was 2 days ago. I got to the second to last boss, and I was having a really difficult time. So I was like, I'll put it down. I'll play it after the podcast. But I couldn't walk away from it. I came back the next day. I did that boss fight maybe like 4 more times, and then I finally beat it. And then it's like, okay, on to final boss's name. And then I was like, well, I can't stop now. Like, why would I do that? And I got through it, and the final boss fight was difficult, but I beat it non-lethal. And God, I loved it. I see every single person's point of view when they beat that game, like how phenomenal. It is incredible if you play it non-lethally. I cannot speak to a genocide or neutral playthrough. I hope you get as much out of it doing a neutral playthrough.
Yeah.
But there are also criteria when you're doing non-lethally that I didn't know you had to meet, and did end up meeting ahead of time anyway.
Oh, okay.
So I was lucky because I wanted to experience the entire game. I did all of the little side events that were there, and there are options in those side events that allow you to get those different endings. So it's possible that you could try to do a genocide run. You could kill everyone and everything you see,
And still not get a true genocide
you could
ending.
still get a neutral ending. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, just because I'm curious. The pacifist, is it just the bosses you have to spare, or literally every encounter you have to do non-lethal?
You can never get 1 point of experience.
Wow, okay.
Every single enemy I run across is non-lethal. Now, there are some bosses, like I thought with Toriel, where you have to weaken them to the point where you can spare them.
Okay.
That does not count against you.
Gotcha.
If you can go through the game, attack every single enemy you see, and as long as you don't kill them and get a single experience point, you can still get that non-lethal ending.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called True Pacifist, like you said. Sorry.
Okay.
So we got through the tutorial level. You got through the next part?
So let's see. Yeah, I met Sans and Papyrus.
Yes, everyone's favorite skeletons.
They're named after a couple of fonts, which I found interesting.
Yeah. And did you notice that they only speak in Comic Sans and Papyrus?
I do. I see that now. Saying it out loud. Yeah. That's funny. So I got through them, and then let's see. What is the last thing I did? I fought Papyrus, and I will tell you that I did choose to spare him and become his friend.
Oh.
You know, he really just wanted to be known, and he wanted to have friends, and he was written in such a way that I could not, in good conscience, kill him.
Yeah.
I did have to spare him. I had to befriend him. It was the only choice that I saw.
It's gonna break my heart to do a genocide playthrough. I really honestly mean that. But one thing I absolutely loved about the writing for Sans and Papyrus is that, one, they were really funny, and it wasn't ever too corny or cliche for me. But one thing I love, and it's such a stupid little thing, but like Sans is like a lazy bones, and and like, I don't know, he slacks off a lot. But I love how much he looks up to his brother, and he talks about like him being so cool, and like that's all Papyrus wants. And it's like so cool to see that dynamic. Like, even though they kind of can hate each other sometimes, they're like perfect for each other. That filled me with determination, if I can be honest.
You mean like the determination you get when you think that maybe the mouse will come out of the hole and eat the cheese? I loved when he might be able to get the spaghetti unstuck from the table Yes.
and then work the microwave. But so you found some really unique enemies at this point. Why is the dog your favorite?
Why is the I think I liked fighting the dog just because it is one of those things where, like you said, if you pay attention to your surroundings, read notes, talk to people, you learn that the dog can only see movement.
Yes.
So I like the fact that when you start getting into the actual like bullet hell type battle, your goal is to just not move.
And then when you pet him, he's like, I've been pet. What happened? Who pet me? But that's not the dog I'm talking about.
Oh.
All the dogs are great. All the dog enemies I love. But the best dog is the lesser dog, the one in the armor with the pike.
Oh, okay. Yes. Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you did it, but did you pet him a lot?
I didn't.
If you pet him, every time you pet him, his neck grows. And you can keep growing his neck till it goes off screen and then comes back down on the other side of the screen. Because every time he gets excited, his neck grows more and more. So I started doing that. I thought it was funny. I was like, how far can this go? Up, back down. And then it gets to the point where he doesn't even fight you. You can just keep petting him until it gets long enough. And it gets to the point where it doesn't get any longer. And then a few screens later, you see these snowmen. And if you did that, you see these snowmen dogs with the hugest necks to the point where it looks like tremors, like all those things coming in out of the ground. And you talk to whoever it is that's at the stand, I forget. And they tell you that this dog came by here and it was so excited it wanted to build a perfect replica of a dog out of snow. But every time it was building it, it got more and more excited and then had to base it off itself. So it kept giving it a longer neck. And it's because you spared the dog and made him so excited that he made a ginormous snow dog with a huge neck. It's stuff like that that makes the game for me.
Now, I did fight the his and her dogs.
Yes.
And I rolled around in the snow, and then I smelled like a puppy. I couldn't get them to do anything with that. They just said that I smelled like a puppy, but then they still wanted to fight me.
Here's what you have to do. You smell like a puppy, then you pet both of them, and they find out that it's amazing that a dog can pet a dog, and they spend time petting each other and realize how amazing it is.
Oh my goodness.
That is this game. I love that. I love that. That's amazing to me. The level of comedy is amazing, but every single enemy has a personality. I love exploring it. I don't know if you got to the guy that looks like a little chicken with a snowflake on his face, and he tells really terrible jokes. Have you gotten to him?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And you can heckle him, and it makes him sad. And then there's those reindeers with decorations all over their face. Do you see those?
Yes, I think.
And if you do it non-lethally, you can just keep taking decorations off. Weight's been lifted. They're like, oh, thank you, and then leave. Oh my god, it's amazing. So the last thing you did was fight Papyrus?
I think so. Yeah. I befriended him, and that was it.
I envy you so much. You have so much ahead of you. Could I give away something small that happened to the end of the game?
Sure.
Or do you not want me to?
No, go right ahead.
Something small I did is when you do the non-lethal playthrough, you obviously get no experience, so your health never goes up. You're stuck with that same amount of health the whole time. Now you can get better armor to give you more defense, and each of that armor has specific abilities. So when I came up to the box at first, I put the butterscotch pie in it. And I never had a need for it because I found other items. By the way, there was a bowl of candy in the tutorial area. Did you take one or did you keep taking it?
I didn't even find the candy.
There's a bowl of candy and it says, here's a bowl of candy. There's a sign that says, take one. Would you like to take a piece of candy? Then you take one. And then it says, you can go back to it. And it's like, you've taken a piece of candy. Would you like to take another? And it says, yes. And it's like, you feel terrible about yourself. And then you keep taking more. And it's like, how can you live with yourself? And it like tips over. So I took a bunch of the candy in the beginning. I had candy for a little bit. And then you pick up items as you go.
Yeah.
I had this butterscotch pie in it the whole time. I got to the final boss. I am light on items. So I put the butterscotch pie in my inventory because I'll need it to heal. It turns out that butterscotch pie has an effect on the final boss of the game. Yeah. How cool is that?
And you had no idea. You just didn't use it because you didn't need it at the time.
I didn't have enough. I didn't have.
Wow.
I didn't know if other armor would increase my health eventually or something like that. But Nope.
That's
It
funny.
was phenomenal.
That's
Yeah.
pretty great.
You get out of the game what you put into it. It's really fantastic.
Do we want to talk about? I mean, obviously, you very much enjoy the game. Do we want to talk about like how we feel about it, or do we want to hold off until the next time where we really get into the meat and the potatoes of the game? Since I know we're kind of getting close to wrapping up.
No, I would love to hear your perspective now, so we can compare it later. Yeah.
So I'm really just I'm not enjoying it. And it's not the writing, it's not the characters. I think they're fine. It's the game itself that really has just completely thrown me off. So the way it works is we've kind of touched on it, but it's a turn-based bullet hell hybrid. So you get this option you can attack, you can act, you can talk, or you can try and like leave or spare. And then after each of those turns, whatever you do, you're put into this little box, this little rectangle. You're the heart, you're the soul, and you have to dodge their incoming projectiles. And they can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They can just be very, very straightforward things falling from the top. They can be things coming at you from the bottom. Both, whatever it is, it's the very definition of bullet hell. And then after so long of that, typically just, several seconds, it's not very long, it's your turn, you get to choose what you want to do again. And number one, I think that the hitboxes of the bullet hell is unbelievably inaccurate, jokingly inaccurate.
Yeah.
But also it's not fun. To me, that I have no enjoyment whatsoever out of that encounter. And because that's such a pivotal part of the game, it's becoming, or it became, even just after 45 minutes, it became a bit of a chore. Every time I got into a battle, I thought, all right, let's do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm afraid that's, and I hope I change my mind, but I'm afraid that's going to be persistent throughout the entire game.
I understand that hurdle, without a doubt. I know in the very beginning, for me, what got me was the overworld graphics. I wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah.
The in-battle sprites, I think, are fantastic. But that and the bullet hell. I never really liked games like Ikaruga, so that initially had turned me off to it. But really, it came to the point where the story and these characters, I wanted to explore them so much that I was willing to forgo that. And eventually, the challenge became more entertaining to me.
Okay.
So I hope that's your experience, but it's totally valid if that's not. Yeah.
And if I do, great. If not, different strokes for different folks. We're not gonna beat ourselves up over it. But I think doing it this way, talking to you, and hopefully hearing what all of you listeners have experienced while playing the game. Hopefully, I don't want you to influence me, but I do want you to open up my eyes to different aspects that maybe I haven't really been paying attention to, like Stone has already been doing.
And you have just finished the papyrus fight, so you see the first variable in the standard combat system, where now when any incoming attack is a light blue color, you are supposed to not move for it. And they introduce that mechanic pretty nicely, but that's not the only. Your heart can change colors, as you saw with the papyrus fight, which grounds you so that you have to jump. You're not free floating, and eventually it can influence both your heart and their attacks, and there are different kinds of abilities you get that can be beneficial to you. So hold out for just a little bit longer on it.
Okay, I can do that.
And I told you, when I got to that second to last boss fight, it was hard. It was frustrating. I'm bad at those kind of bullet hell games, so I was not having a great time because they are so hard. It was something to try to get through. Any other gripes you had with it?
That's my big one. That's my big one. Everything else, I'm at least entertained by. So I want any other judgment I want to withhold until I get more through it, and I'm at least going to play through it one full turn before we do the next episode. So I'll at least be able to talk about the game in its entirety. I can't say that I'm going to get all of the endings, but I will have put more time into it so I can expound on how I feel.
Right. I mean, you're allowed to not like games.
Right.
Every game is someone's favorite game, but everyone's probably someone's least favorite.
And I'm just concerned because I looked up reviews. I didn't read reviews. I just looked at some scores because I know that this was critically acclaimed, and I know a lot of my friends loved this game. And so as I'm playing and thinking, I don't even want to finish this. And then I look at scores and I see perfect scores from several outlets. And then I see
Perfect?
a Metacritic of, I saw several 10 out of 10s. Destructoid, 10 out of 10. Game Informer, 9.5. IGN, 10 out of 10.
Doesn't count.
But the Metacritic, 92 out of 100 is solid. I mean, that's really high. So I immediately thought, what am I doing wrong? And while I don't think I'm playing it wrong, I think I need to play it more consciously.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to do going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Take some time. Just be present with the characters, because I got so much out of the story. I really did.
I think that's a good way of putting it, being present. Sure.
You can't play it because you have to play it. And don't even play it for me. Really just take the time to get to know the characters. Because even just exploring that relationship with Sans and Papyrus, like Papyrus yells at him all day, but like Sans thinks he's like the coolest, even if he's not his brother. And
right.
That's so cool. But like everything has a resolution to it. But it's not all touchy-feely. It's really cool. But let's explore some undertones of Undertale, if we may. The first thing I want to talk about and get your opinion about, and I don't even know if you were conscious of this when you were playing, because it's pretty on the nose, but your character, in the official gameplay and everything, they're known as Frisk, but you get to name the character yourself. They appear, and even the official name is pretty gender neutral. And the skin tone of it, the way their eyes look, Toby kind of created this with the ability to have any person imprint themselves on it. They don't look like they have any particular skin color for the most part, because it's a cartoon. They don't look like they have any particular, way that their eyes look. They don't look like they have any particular gender. So it's kind of open in that way. And it's not just for the players, but I think it's a pretty big statement. Is that something you notice?
I didn't. I'll be honest. That's something that definitely flew right past me.
I do think it's really conscious. And I think it's a nice thing to have in a game like this, where it was all built on the fact that you can, you can play through this entire game non-lethal. It's against kind of the grain of normal games, and look how well it was received. But I think it's so important to have this kind of representation of all players who can play through it, that you can imprint yourself, and then it adds to your experience. You can have this relationship with these characters, but there's no like one model for what a player looks like, even though there's only one choice. So I think that was a really cool design choice, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. Now, it's like your player character is just an amalgamation of basically every human on the face of the planet.
It is.
So you are anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there's a lot of that in this game. There's a lot of just like accepting people for the way that people are. They have a few characters that are seen as gay or lesbian, but they're never like explicitly hit on that point. They're just treated like people, or in this case, normal other monsters. But there's all these themes in it, and it stands for something so strong, but it never beats you with it. It's just like, these people exist. These are their lives. You happen to be the problem, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, was that something you picked up? I don't know if you're far enough to see any of that yet.
I don't know that I am.
Mm-hmm.
But this is good because it's something for me to look out for as I keep going.
I have a lot of praise for this game. Before I played this game, this was stuff I wasn't even really aware of, and I didn't think of. After I played it, I mean, I delved into all the content really that's in the game. There is some post-game stuff that I'm going back and doing. I have not yet gotten to do it, but I'm really thrilled to be able to. But I loved it. I loved it. I really did absolutely love this game, and I plan on playing that Genocide playthrough and see if I am a terrible person, because all these characters I love will now die by my hand.
You're going to feel so dirty.
Yeah, and here's the worst part, right? After I played it, I collect amiibo. I love collecting amiibo. I don't really use them that much, but I love collecting them. And I have shelves of them. And Fangamer makes these figures for Undertale that are very similar to the size of amiibo. And it is so hard for me not to click buy every single day. But they have the lesser dog there, and I want it so badly. Its head extends just a little bit, and I was losing it when I saw that. But yeah, I want that so badly. Oh yeah. I mean, and I'm saying this, and I feel like I'm putting pressure on you, but you are allowed to hate it. This can be the worst game you ever played, but I want you to give it a shot.
I am. I was nervous to even do this podcast because I just played it this morning. I woke up early to play, and maybe I wasn't fully awake either. That could have been it, but I'm just playing and thinking. Honestly, I kid you not, I Googled, what do people see in Undertale? I did. I literally Googled, what do people see in it, because I don't get it.
Oh my God.
And there are articles with very similar titles that maybe I'll actually dip into, not to spoil myself, but just to give me a frame of reference of things to look for, because I don't want to go in with an overly negative or an overly positive. I want to truly experience the game like other people have.
You know what I immediately thought of there? This is going to take out some of the younger audience, but in the first Zoolander, when Will Ferrell's there, he's like, I invented the piano key necktie. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. He only has one look. Like, that's what I imagine you feeling like. Everybody in the world loves Zoolander, that's Undertale, and you were just Will Ferrell.
I guess I feel like people are taking crazy pills, but I don't want to feel that way.
Right. It's Big Bang Theory syndrome all over again.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
There is one very critical thing we're forgetting to mention here.
Are we?
The music.
Oh.
I mean, you don't pay much attention to music, but please tell me you noticed it.
I noticed it. I don't know that I loved it. I did actually, try and stop and listen, and I don't know, maybe just retro 8-bit's not my thing. It just wasn't doing it for me.
I mean, I don't sit around and listen to chiptunes, but the atmosphere in this game is so phenomenal. Every song sets the scene. I can't emphasize enough how important the music is to it. The game was built around the music. So please, I know you're not the biggest music fan. When you get a chance, just throw headphones on. Even if there's no one else in the house, just throw headphones on and listen to it, because, yeah, I mean, it's a reward. It really is.
All right, fine.
And I mean, every character has their own individual themes too. So, I don't know, it kind of adds to their personality. Papyrus is a little ridiculous, and that's fine. Like,
I will do my best. I will do what I can to try and give it a fair shot. Everything. Mm-hmm. The battle, the story, the music, everything. Mm. Just as of right now, I am underwhelmed by Undertale.
Right. And I understand where you're coming from, because you were at the spot where I quit the first time.
Gotcha.
So I was in your shoes a year, 2 years ago, and I'm telling you, Mike, it gets better.
That is good to know.
I used to be where you are. Strung out on shooters. I was never strung out on shooters, but I do play too much Madden. Final thoughts on Undertale.
Give me time. Give me time to give it time.
Okay. Here's mine. I need time to play more. All right.
That's fair.
We're going to come back next time. Mike's going to tell us why he hated it.
No. I'm going to tell you my experience one way or another.
I hope we're flipped next time, right? I hope that I'll have done this lethal playthrough. I'll have felt so terrible about myself that I honestly cannot go on with the discussion. And I hope that you are sitting over there, either having done a lethal playthrough and murdering everyone because you don't care, or just having done this pacifist, or even the neutral, where you'll get the option to do either after the fact. God, I just hope you like it half as much as I did. Because I never thought I would be one of the cultists, but I'm drinking the punch. And it filled me with determination.
So that being said, for everyone listening, if you have played it before and you've played one of the specific endings, let us know what you thought. Let us know, and you don't have to agree with me or with Stone. Just tell us your experience so I know what to look for, and so Stone has an idea of what he has to look forward to, if there's anything, in his genocide run.
Oh God, I know that I don't have anything to look forward to. Like, Toriel, thank you so much for helping me with everything. Dead. Sands of Papyrus, this was a blast. Dead. Like, I'm not ready to do that. Like, the beginning is when you meet the most endearing characters.
Sure.
There's such a range of characters in this, really, but they're the most endearing in the beginning. I don't have the heart. If I can't get through the beginning of the game, it's not happening. I just want to rant and rave about how good this game is. I want you to finish it, even if it's bad. I want you to finish it.
I'm going to finish it. You have my word. I will finish it.
And I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just my own selfish wants here. But even if you hate it, I just wanted you to have experienced the same thing that I did. And I think that's, what's great about us as humans, and this is the podcast. We just want to share good or great experiences we have with people. I mean, even if you taste something terrible and you're like, ew, taste how gross this is. You're like, somebody else had this experience, so I'm not crazy.
Right. Know? That's absolutely true.
I mean, and that is the point of our podcast. So thank you guys, as always, for listening. Again, you can check us out on YouTube, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, iTunes, and Stitcher. We will be uploading our next video on July 15th. No, June 15th. Skipping ahead of my birthday already. All right. As always, this has been the Forgot to Save podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I have been Stone.
And I'm Mike.
And we will see you on the 15th.